Members of the public continue to pay tribute this morning and pay their respects to the late Congressman John Lewis as he lies in state at the U.S. Capitol. Because of the pandemic, Lewis's casket sits just outside the Capitol building. Yesterday, a hearse carrying his body made one last trip around Washington, D.C. before fellow lawmakers paid tribute at a service in the rotunda. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill with more on what lawmakers had to say about Congressman Lewis.
Good morning, Jerika. John Lewis will lie in state all day today there at the top of the east front steps of the Capitol, where you see those flowers. And then down at the bottom of the steps, you can see the ropes that have been laid out for the public to walk by in a socially distanced way.
All right, now to this. The U.S. is encroaching on 4.3 million coronavirus infections. And the nation's top infectious disease expert says Americans should expect even more suffering in the coming months. Since the pandemic began, more than 148,000 people across the country have lost their lives. Just in the past week alone, the daily death toll has surpassed 1,005 times. But while the number of deaths continue to rise, the number of new cases seems to be slowing down. Yesterday, confirmed cases rose by 55,000, the slowest daily pace since July 7th. Still, hospitals in several states are overwhelmed with incoming patients maxing out ICUs. And while the nation waits for an effective vaccine, health officials are urging states to implement stricter safety measures. For more on this, let's bring in New York pediatrician Dr. Diane Hess. Doctor, an ex-Obama health chief is claiming that the U.S. could, quote, virtually eliminate COVID-19 in a matter.
The details are out now on the former vice president's economic agenda surrounding racial economic equality. This is the fourth, what the Biden campaign is calling pillars of the former vice president's economic plan. And what they're saying is they want to steer more government funding towards small minority businesses and also infrastructure in minority communities. And there's also a really interesting focus here on the Federal Reserve. What the Biden campaign is calling for here is an expansion of the Federal Reserve's mandate to really focus on economic racial justice. That's something that the Fed has not been expected to do before. The Biden campaign, though, says that they feel that this is a little noticed but important piece of the overall racial justice component in the United States. So some interesting ideas here coming out of the Biden campaign. We'll see the former vice president later on today in Wilmington, Delaware, laying all of this out on TV. And what's fascinating, Carl, when you take the Biden economic agenda in total and compare it to the Trump economic agenda, what strikes me is the similarities in terms of their approach to globalization, trade, and in particular China. Both men seem to want a similar goal in terms of decoupling, or at least lessen the coupling between the United States and the Chinese economy, bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and sort of a de-globalization. They differ on how to get there, but the goal remains the same. And it seems like with this presidential campaign, Carl, we're entering an era of de-globalization, or at least lessening globalization from both parties in American politics.
Joined now by Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Fauci, thank you for joining us this morning. I got to say, this is not the way I expected to start the interview, but I have to have you respond, first of all, to those tweets from President Trump that were taken down overnight. First, on that one that said you don't need masks, there is a cure. It's called hydroxychloroquine. Can you just clarify for our viewers the best scientific guidance we have on masks and hydroxychloroquine?
We should all be wearing masks outside, George. This is something that, as you heard Dr. Birx mentioned when she was making a comment, it's very important. There are certain fundamental things we should be doing, particularly if you happen to be in an area where there's viral activity. Wear a mask all the time when you're outside. Social distancing, 6 feet at least. Avoid crowds. Close bars in areas where there's viral activity, and do hand hygiene. There's no question about that. So that's something that's not really arguable.
How about hydroxychloroquine? The president promoting the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine. We know the FDA has recommended against emergency use.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I go along with the FDA. The overwhelming prevailing clinical trials that have looked at the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine have indicated that it is not effective in coronavirus disease.
And one of the retweets from the president also accuses you of misleading the public on many issues. You've been at the NIH since 1984. Yeah. You've advised 6 presidents. Can you continue to do your job when the President of the United States is publicly questioning your credibility in this way?
You know, George, I don't know how to address that. I'm just going to certainly continue doing my job. I don't tweet. I don't even read them. So I don't really want to go there. I just will continue to do my job no matter what comes out, because I think it's very important. We're in the middle of a crisis with regard to an epidemic, a pandemic. This is what I do. This is what I've been trained for my entire professional life, and I'll continue to do it.
To the charge you've been misleading the American public?
I have not been misleading the American public under any circumstances.
Let's talk about reopening right now. Which states are you most concerned about?
I just want to get some things straight for the record here. Did Attorney General Barr order the Park Police to clear the square?
No, sir, he did not.
Did White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows order the Park Police to clear the square?
No.
Did anyone at the White House order the Park Police to clear the square?
No, sir. I think based on the level of violence and sustained violence that we saw beginning on May 29th through June 1st, this was one of the most violent protests that I've been a part of in my 23 years with the United States Park Police.
We can see protesters who were clearly confused, who didn't appear to be told that they were about to be advanced on, who didn't appear to be told that they were in violation of a specific law as your settlement requires. Do you feel that that was understood by those protesters as evidenced by that video footage?
So I think when you take into account video footage, there's context. And based on other video that I've viewed from June 1st and specifically around this time frame when the first warning was given, throughout the first warning through the third warning, you can see a number of demonstrators leave the area and heed the warning that was given from the incident commander.
All right. Well, Chief Moynihan, we do look forward to getting the evidence that backs up your account of this. But, Mr. Chair, from everything we've heard, from everything we've seen, it sure appears as if the Park Police ignored their own legal requirements in the settlement to follow these procedures, almost as if they wanted the crowd to be confused so that they could go in with maximum force and perhaps appease a president who just hours earlier had urged police to act that way. I yield back.